Hey everybody, so I've been noticing on YouTube that people have been doing a lot of these everyday carry sort of videos, and I thought it would be nice to put up everyday carry video for when I'm rock guiding, as well as this can kind of pretty much work for also when I'm just outside climbing on my own in my free time. Generally when I multi-pitch climb, I will bring pretty much all this stuff with me, and it's always on my harness, no matter if I'm doing a sport multi-pitch or a trad multi-pitch, or a short climb or a long climb or whatever. Generally all this gear is on my harness because it all serves a specific use. I notice that sometimes people, when they go on bigger climbs or just other climbs, they bring either a whole lot of things or not quite enough gear that they could use or they would need, and then they have to start substituting maybe a critical item like a locking carabiner, and they have to substitute in a non-locker, even though that would be pretty catastrophic if they tend to if the carabiner were to fail. So I thought this video would help out, and please let me know what you bring up on any sort of multi-pitch with you, and if you would substitute any of this gear out. I do plan on making an everyday carry for mountaineering guiding too, which is what I'm actually doing quite a bit of nowadays in the summer in Washington. That's where all the money's at, so that's what I'm doing quite a bit, and I'll be releasing that video soon. But for now, this is everything I usually take up with me for a day of rock guiding, and just when I'm climbing on my own. I don't always have this gear, all of this gear on my harness, especially when I'm single pitch climbing, but a lot of times it does live in my backpack, and I have the tools necessary if I need them for whatever. And then when I go up for my single pitch sport routes, I'll just bring the quick draws that I need and maybe 1 or 2 locking carabiners, and then probably a Belay Device. But sometimes I only bring up a locker. So starting with the stuff that I keep in my backpack, this is, as you all know, this is the backpack that I mainly use for rock guiding and rock climbing. This is the BD Creek 35. I keep a number of things in this backpack at all times. Stuff like I have my food, a small roll of toilet paper just in case you need it. I carry a headlamp with it. This is like I think it's a 300 lumen headlamp, which you definitely do not need for any sort of rock climbing. You can get away with like a much less powered headlamp, but I always carry this in my backpack, and generally I always carry it in this front mesh pocket. I'll also carry a lighter with me, and a knife for well, you can just use lighters and knives for anything. I guess in an emergency you can always light a fire, but a lot of times I will use this to cut cord for my clients, because sometimes, especially with teaching stuff, I'll tell them to bring cord with them, and then they don't know how to cut it, so I can use the knife to cut it and then the lighter to burn the edges so that way it doesn't unravel. And then they're just 2 very good bits of kit to have with you anytime you're out in the woods. So those guys live right there. I also usually have my guide notebook with me, and that's for taking notes on the days, writing about the objectives, writing about the clients, whatever. I'll always have my guide notebook with me. And so far, pretty much all that equipment is with me in the Alpine realm too, because, it's basic finding your way around, and you can use a knife for just about anything. So I keep all that stuff in my Alpine backpack as well. Now, some other stuff that I keep specifically in this backpack are things like this Tether, the Black Diamond, what's it called? Black Diamond Link or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. It's the chain link tether sort of deal, which I'll use for rappelling on routes that are pretty technical, like a lot of hanging rappels, and if I need a lot of extension in my tether. So I like having that for certain routes. I'll also bring along another double link sling with a locking carabiner, and that'll be for my clients if they ever forget to bring that essential piece of equipment, so that way they can have the tether while they're getting rappelling off the route. Other things I keep in the bottom of my backpack are usually an extra Belay device. with the locker in this case. I have the Megajoule here, which is actually kind of a nice device to give to clients, especially ones that aren't too experienced at belaying. And then I just have a random locking carabiner along with it, so that way you can actually use the device. I also have a few extra lockers. This is 3 extra locking carabiners, which I do use for clients, for what have you, either a carabiner for them to lock themselves into at the anchor, or for their belay device if they don't have a good carabiner to rappel with. So 3 extra pair locking carabiners. Keep those in the bottom of the pack. What's this thing called? My Camp Ovo, which is good belay device when you're belaying 2 separate clients. It's a GG style device. I have a review on this. You can see me talk in depth about it, but I usually carry this in the bottom of my pack. And I don't really bring too many of those things in the Alpine with me. Those are more rock specific sort of gadgets. So that's pretty much everything that I have in my pack. Every day I'm out working or even climbing. They all just come in handy for different things. It may seem like a lot, but remember, when you're working with clients, just possibly 2 or even up to 4 clients, it's good to have a little bit of extra gear. Now on my harness, I got all my harness stuff laid out here. I switch between a couple of different harnesses. It's pretty much I sort of make sure that they all have the same thing, which is 4 gear loops. And then I really like having one of these back gear loops to store stuff that I really don't use a lot right there. But I always have a harness with me, obviously. Sometimes I don't have climbing shoes or a chalk bag, depending on what's being climbed or how much I'm climbing. But I'll always have a harness. I'll also always have a helmet with me, which I do not have out, but you're always going to have a harness and a helmet. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is, another thing I keep in my backpack is my medical kit, my Adventure Medical Kit Ultralight 0.9, my SAM splint, and then a roller piece of, ace wrap, along with a little bag of like 2 or 3 pairs of sterile gloves. And that's just in case I have some sort of medical emergency. I don't have that here with me since it's all moved to my mountaineering backpack, because that's what I'm using it for right now. But normally that would be in the bottom of my pack too, along with all that other stuff. So keep that in mind when you're packing your pack. Alright, so as for everyday carry with my climbing gear, I'll start on the left here. This is like 18 feet or so of 6mm cord and a carabiner. I keep this mainly for emergencies. I really don't use this too much for anchors. Every now and again I have to, for whatever reason, whether it's trad or sport. Generally it's because I forgot my other anchor material at the last station or on my partner. And so I keep this cord on for emergency situations, like if I have to do counterbalance carry or some sort of retrieve the device from the system or whatever. I got cord with me, and there's really no reason why you shouldn't have it with you. When I put it on my harness, I put it on the very back because I know I'm not really gonna, most likely not gonna use it throughout the entire climb. It's just in case of emergency. Another thing I got is a double link sling with a carabiner. I tend to switch up my double links a lot, but this is just something that I'll use mainly as a tether while I'm climbing up, or while I'm rappelling down the climb. Another option would be to use that link, that black diamond link thing that I showed you earlier that I keep in the bottom of my pack. And if that's the case, then generally I may choose to leave this double length behind if I'm going to use the link, because that's really all that I use double length slings for nowadays, is extensions. I will use them for anchors every now and again, but most of the time I'm using something like cord or quad anchors. So this just lives on the back of my harness, and I only use it for the descent. Obviously you gotta have a third hand type of material. This is the classic one, the Sterling, what's it called, hollow block. So you can make this out of cord as well, but use this as my third hand for extra safety while rappelling, and if I need to stop and mess with ropes or whatever, then I have it. I keep it on a locking carabiner because it's highly suggested among the community of professionals that you use a locking carabiner with your third hand, because if this fails, that would be rather catastrophic. So locking carabiner helps bring that margin down to a smaller amount. Put that on the back of my harness because I only use it for the descent as well. Next is really two things. These are my two main anchors that I use, with both having non-locking carabiners. I only have one carabiner because if you've seen in my other videos, I use a quick draw for the other point connection to the other bolt. A lot of times if I'm using these for tread anchors, I'm placing cams that already have carabiners on them, and I just don't want to carry too much. I'm already carrying enough while I'm at it. Will I bring two of these every time? When I'm guiding, pretty much, yeah. Sometimes I switch up the materials, but if I'm guiding, I'm expected to bring, everything we need. So I got two quads that I'll generally arrange into quad anchors and leave them all the way up if the route has bolted stations all the way up, and then use them for rappelling down. That's just the easiest way to do it, and I don't have to build an anchor at every stance. And then I, of course, untie them at the end of the day and arrange them into these nice little bundles. If I'm climbing with a friend, sometimes I won't bring two, maybe just one, or just drop both of them if I don't need them. And I can maybe bring them both if my friend also doesn't have any anchors. But these pretty much live on my harness all the time because I end up using them all the time, especially for guiding. I put these on the back left because that's always where I put my anchor stuff, is on the back left gear loop of my harness. That's just always how I've done it. It's like the gear loop that I use the least amount, and so it makes sense to have the anchor stuff there. So that way I have the other gear loops that I use more free. Belay devices. So sometimes I'll travel with just one belay device. Like if I do, it's obviously going to be a belay device that does it all, like the ATC. Or I also got the Megajoule right here. This would be comparable. Sometimes I travel with two belay devices, like a Grigri, either a Grigri 2, Grigri Plus, or something else that I happen to have with me. So sometimes I will just have two, or I've never really had three before, but I do sometimes go with multiple belay devices, and that's just to have variety. And if you know the rest of the videos on my channel, I'm always trying out more belay devices to have reviews on them, so I want to see what they're like in a variety of situations. So yeah, but I always have some sort of ATC or a device that I can belay and rappel with and belay from above with. So you have to be able to rappel and belay from above with it if you only want to travel with one device. And of course I have two carabiners with that, so that way I can do belay from above with this device at an anchor. I put both the devices on the back right gear loop, just because, again, that's always sort of how I've done it. Next up, right here, I got my 4 locking carabiners. They are sort of different styles. I have 2 of the Black Diamond Magnetrons, where you have to squeeze them and open them up. I have 1 of these Petzl Attachés and 1 of these Camp Nitro carabiners. I call them the big blue ones. I'm not a big fan of those giant orange carabiners that Camp have because they're just kind of hard to open up with my small hands. But these ones are actually really nice. I'm probably going to pick up 2 or 3 more of these. But so I have a fair amount of different carabiners here, and that's because I kind of prefer them for different things. A lot of times if I'm clipping myself in, I'll use a magnetron for that, just because it's, the triple action locking makes me feel good. If I'm ever clipping into my belay loop of my harness for whatever reason and then clipping rope into that, which happens a fair amount while you're guiding, I'll use a magnetron for that as well. And so it's just nice to have that extra safety. Another thing that's cool about these magnetrons is that my Belay Carabiner, which is one of the cheap black diamond screw gates, they're the same size. If you can see them compared together. I always want at least 2 carabiners of the same size, or pretty much sometimes the exact same model, like these two, with me, so that way it helps make me set up a redirected plate lower a bit easier. And yes, my preference is to have 2 of the same carabiners, not exactly 2 different carabiners, because I've tried them out over the years and I find that 2 of the same carabiners give you just enough friction, like plenty of friction, without causing too much friction, which having a smaller carabiner and the redirected strand can do at times, and it can be annoying. So that's why I always want to have at least 2 of the same carabiner with me. In this case I have 3. But then I also have these other guys to give me some variety. This blue one is the biggest carabiner I carry with me, and so if I want to set up a master carabiner on a certain point, then I can use this for that. If I want to do the monster Munter, which I've never wanted to do, and I've never really met anyone who wants to do that, then I can use this carabiner for it. And it has a few other options there as well. Actually, that's another thing I'll use the magnetron for, is if I am setting up a master carabiner, that extra triple action locking is really nice. And then this one, it doesn't exactly have a specific use, but just by having another screw gate carabiner, I have something that I can work a little bit easier with. And if I want to leave this unlocked for whatever reason, I can. If I'm like changing a Munter into a clove hitch, then it's easy enough to unlock this and clip it in, whereas with these magnetrons it would be kind of more of a hassle. So it's just good to have another manual screw gate on your harness, and that's all about personal preference. It's what works for me the best. I just like this for carabiner setup for rock guiding. When it comes to mountaineering guiding, I tend to leave these guys behind because it's a lot of times I'm on volcanoes and they have the magnetized sediment with them, and so that'll just get all messed up and all the magnetized locking features. So I pretty much only bring out these types of magnetrons for rock guiding. I usually clip the 2 magnetrons together and they go on the back left gear loop. And then these guys both go on the back right. And I usually have those separate because I need to clip those on different things. Another thing I've also started doing recently is bringing up a 5th pair carabiner, pair locking carabiner. That's mainly on routes where I know there's going to be a lot of technical difficulties, and I may need an extra locking carabiner, especially when clients maybe don't have all the gear you need. This would be also fine if I just grabbed another locking carabiner from the bottom of my backpack. So I don't always have this on my harness, but because I always have those extra lockers in my backpack, I have that option to grab another locker. Obviously, you gotta have your belay gloves. I use these all the time, especially for rappelling and when I'm doing a lot of rope work, kiwi coils, short roping and whatnot. And I keep those on a full strength carabiner that I only use for holding my gloves pretty much. Yes, I do recommend, like everyone else, to use a full strength carabiner even when you're just holding stuff, because you don't want to have like one of those little stupid D-ring keychains and then have someone mess that up or mix it up with your actual climbing gear. So it's always good to just have real full strength stuff. I also keep these on the very back of my harness because it's not like I really use them on the climb up all that much. So this is another item. I just started using this like maybe a few weeks ago, the locking quick draw. So what it is it's a locking carabiner up here and then a locking carabiner down here. And I can't say that I've used it a whole lot. I can't say it's part of my everyday carry on my harness either, but I can say that it has been proving itself worthy lately, and I've been using it a lot. I think it's more of a useful alpine tool. It has a bunch of great uses while rock climbing. One is mainly it makes a really easy extension for your belay device off your harness when rappelling. If you want a really quick and easy extension, this would work. And yeah, it just keeps on finding uses. If you clove hitch yourself into the master point of an anchor, you can clip this on to the master point and then extend your ATC out a little ways in order to not have the rope from the ATC running over your clove hitch. And really this just warrants a separate video altogether. But it's slowly becoming part of my everyday carry. It's not fully there yet, but I thought I should include it just to be inclusive. Well guys, that's everything I have that I bring out with me anytime I'm rock climbing. Again, I may leave like 1 or 2 items out, like the locking quick draw here and there, but that's pretty much everything I have in my backpack, and it pretty much just all lives in my backpack while I'm doing my job. Either a day of guiding when I have all this stuff out and I need it for anchors and stuff, or if I'm just out a day for a day of single pitch climbing with me and my friends. I'll bring all that stuff and just leave most of it in my backpack so my harness can be free, so that way I can focus on climbing more than just having all this crap hanging off of me. But that's everything that I've found over the years that I think is very useful to have while you're out multi-pitch climbing. It works well with my systems and helps me out when I'm working with 1 or 2 clients on big routes. Feel free to leave a comment if you have anything else you like to bring up, or a question if you have if you want to know the reason why I tend to bring any of this stuff that I have. And then I will see you guys in the next video.